I'm Van Sebastian here with my co-host S.A. Baz Collins for this week's Written on the Edge, Season 8, Episode 53 interview. We'll be talking with Ryan States and discussing his works. So let's get to know our guest. Ryan
Hiya.
States. Ryan States was born in Calgary, Alberta, but spent his childhood in Saskatoon and then returned to Alberta as an adult. He lives with his platonic life partner, another writer, Gayleen Froese, and many animals, as Gayleen has told us, as she's a veteran of the show. In addition to his writing, he's an actor and occasional stand-up comedian and is employed as a corporate trainer. He self-published 2 books, Souria and Silver Bullets, and then published 2 others with the Seventh Terrace Press, Sleeping Underwater, and the one we're here to discuss today, Somebody Else's Story. Ryan, welcome to the show.
Hiya. Thank you. I'm pleased to be here.
So, for you, where did the passion start? Why start putting words down on pages?
Do you know, it would be hard for me to even put that down. I remember I started to read at a ridiculously early age. I terrified my mother one day by walking into the living room and asking if she believed in reincarnation, because I'd read her copy of Audrey Rose that had been sitting on a book, and I was 3 years old at the time. But I think for as long as I can remember, being a writer is what I wanted to do. It was from as early as 5 years old. Telling stories is what I've kind of always loved doing.
3 years old, huh? That's precocious of you.
Yeah, it was. I didn't really realize how creepy that question was to a woman who had just read Audrey Rose until I was much older. But yeah.
Nice. Love it. So, we're here to discuss someone else's story. And it's a partial sequel. So, do people need to know anything about Sleeping Underwater before we dive into this one?
Well, that's the question that I wrestled with the whole time I wrote this book and published it. Do they need to have read the first book? And ultimately, I came down on the side of no, not really. Anything that's in that first book is important. That's important is kind of covered in this book, mentioned and explained. But Tom is a fairly minor character, but one with a lot of emotional resonance in the first book. He's an ex-boyfriend of the one of the lead characters. But Tom kind of took up residence in my head, as sometimes minor characters in your book will do.
Mhm.
And he's kind of been there. And one of the things about Tom that I really appreciate from that book is that his own life seemed really interesting, but we only ever got tiny little pieces of it. He's an investigative journalist, traveled all over the world, went to war zones, all that stuff, but we never see any of that side of him in the book. And kind of amusingly, we don't see any of that side of him in this book either. His life of adventure is very much over by the time this book starts, and it's kind of the entire book is about his feeling that his own life is not as important as his role as a supporting character for other people.
That's very meta.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the thing is, it's funny because I think it's a feeling that a lot of people have. You know, you'll go online and you'll see people are like, reply if you were always the friend that was last to be invited to parties, that kind of thing. I think a lot of people feel like a supporting character. I think it's especially common for queer
And
folks,
those
and
who think
especially
that
aging.
they're the main characters often aren't.
Exactly, right?
That's the
Yeah,
other side of that coin.
I think a lot of us have the exact opposite of main character energy, you know? And I think as you get older as a queer person, I know one of the things that I've really found is I don't have any kids. I'm not going to have any kids. Um, but there's this urge to find and mentor young people, and this created families become so much more important. And um, in a lot of ways, when I wrote the book, I thought it was kind of just a goofy lark. But more and more people, as they've read it, have told me that they really got this other emotional undercurrent from it, and I can't deny it. It's there.
Nice. So, what would be the elevator pitch if I walked up to you at a booth and said, "What's this about?"
I would say the elevator pitch would be investigative journalist is hired to go and do a story on a performance artist who works in gore and flesh, and the performance artist turns out to be Frankenstein's monster, still alive in the modern day, and just as bitter as he was in Mary Shelley's original book.
Okay, that added a whole new element to this conversation.
Yeah.
So it's a bit supernatural as well.
Yes, it is. Sleeping Underwater and Someone Else's Story, and actually all of the books that we've listed are all part of kind of a cycle of books that I call the Souria cycle, which are about magic and its influence in the real world in kind of subtle ways. So
Do each of them touch on an element of fiction that could have given magic reverberations to society, or is Frankenstein specifically to this one is the only example of that?
Frankenstein is the most blatantly supernatural element in this book, but there's this fictional island, Souria, which is a little spot of real magic in a mundane world, and there's a lot of false document stuff in my book. So the implications that it had this huge unrealized impact on pop culture. So the song Purple Haze was written about the island. The name of the Beatles is a result of the island, all of these things. But the island brings together Frankenstein's monster and the beat writer William S. Burroughs. And they are lovers for a brief while in the 50s and Tangiers. So it's really quite
Oh.
odd, I understand. I see the look on your face that it is a look many people have said, but I mean, if you have ever wanted to read a book in which the Frankenstein monster's genitalia are described in horrifying detail, this is the book. And it's funny, I blame my editor. She sent me a note in the book. She said, okay, so you've got him in a robe here that's hanging open with Tom, and you're not going to describe his wang? And I'm like, fair enough. Let me get back onto that.
Okay,
He must have an enormous Schwanzstücke.
He does, and that's not all.
Sorry,
that
I had to go to Mel Brooks.
I understand, and I mean that's fair too, because I love Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, and I really do, and I wanted to be as loyal to her vision of the monster as I could. But also, the monster in her book is an enormous drama queen, and I mean I can't blame him. His life is awful, but he remains that exact kind of drama queen in this book, to the point where he is often quite funny.
Well, that whole crew of writers had such a queer slant to everything they did. You know, they're kind of the epitome of queerdom when it comes to literary circles. You know,
absolutely, and there's no degree to which you can mock Lord Byron enough for his
right. Mad,
whole
bad,
thing.
And dangerous to know.
Exactly. But yeah, the Frankenstein's monster, he takes the name of William S. Frankenstein eventually, because he is fascinated by William Burroughs' concept of cut-up literature, and he says, "What am I if I'm not the embodiment of cut-ups given flesh? I'm a single person made out of pieces of hundreds of others," and he really embraces that aesthetic and becomes a performance artist. And I'm sorry if you guys can hear my puppy whining, but he's mad I'm not letting him in here.
Oh. Okay, now I can hear him just because you mentioned it.
Yeah.
Okay, so how does Tom get involved with Frankenstein's monster? Adam.
Well,
should we just call him Adam?
Yeah, well, as a result of the events of Sleeping Underwater, Tom becomes a reluctant immortal. So he has discovered that he cannot die. He heals from almost anything ridiculously quickly. And his response to that has been increasing alienation. So he's become an alcoholic recluse living in Western Canada, and he occasionally takes job assignments from his old editor at a newspaper in England to make make his bills, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And sidebar, folks, hold on.
Yeah, people are going to think that Michael Myers has something to do with the dog.
Would he be better if he was allowed in to lay at your feet, or would he be all over the place?
Sorry, folks. All right, where was I?
Would it be better if you let the dog in? So wouldn't
no, I think it'll be okay. He's going to quiet down now. But okay. All right, there we go.
All right.
Making ends meet.
Right. So he takes jobs as a freelance journalist to make ends meet, but also he takes commands from a British Secret Service agency that studies the supernatural. And both of them kind of, oh God, I'm going to let him in. Hold on.
Okay. had a feeling people were going to start getting Silence of the Lambs kind of feel to it.
Poor puppy. My person is not letting me in. I mean, mine would be scratching at the door too, so I just...
Yeah, well.
They have beds in here for that reason.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry, you guys.
It's okay.
He won't come in. Oh, give me 2 more minutes.
You got it.
Right when you find work. That's what my dad used to always say when I was leaving the house.
Huh. All right.
See ya, right when you find work. Okay, Dad.
My dad's
anyways, while he's gone, I have a couple of more things to put up on Patreon that I'll be posting, so I'll text you later today when they're available. I'm just waiting for them to go through the handbrake crunch to make the file smaller. So when they're done rendering that, then I'll put them up.
Okay. This is my quiet weekend, so I'm home all weekend. So
okay. And you got my request on the update of the
358
Patreons?
Yeah, I gave it a thumbs up.
Okay.
Fellas, I'm so sorry. He had gotten himself locked in the bathroom.
Oh.
Okay. Let me try that again. So Tom, to make ends meet, he sometimes takes assignments from a newspaper that he used to work for, and he's also sometimes given assignments by a British Secret Service agency that studies monsters, basically. And both of them say, we want you to go interview William S. Frankenstein. He has a temper. We know that if he loses his temper on you, you're going to be fine. So go see him. And he does.
How publicly known is the supernatural element of your world?
Not at all.
Okay.
It is essentially our world as it is. Magic is sort of a shadowy secret thing. The way I look at it as being in the real world, which is, I think it's out there, but typically people don't see it. So
right. Do you classify it as urban fantasy?
I mean, I would, except there's no women in tank tops with swords on the front cover. But yeah, I mean, essentially, it's a modern fantasy. I would say even horror to a certain extent.
Okay.
But yeah.
All right. Anything else you want folks to... Well, okay, so let's go back to the feeling of being a supporting character.
Sure.
When you're up against a literary icon, like, I don't know, Frankenstein's monster,
sure.
How do you not feel like a supporting character?
Well, I mean, that's exactly it. You absolutely do feel like a supporting character. And one of the things about the book is that there is clearly more going on with Frankenstein's creature and what he's up to, which involves North Korea, that than Tom ever finds out about.
As one does,
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a whole thing where apparently the glorious leader of North Korea is trying to get Frankenstein's monster to assist him in achieving immortality. But Tom never finds out the full extent of this because Tom instead spends most of the book being experimented on by the monster, who is fascinated by his ability to heal from terrible things. And Tom just spends the entire book wanting to get paid and go home. Because at this point, literally the only thing he wants in his life is a glass of scotch, and his friends that he hangs out with, however few there are. Life for him has become entirely about just survival, and he's not in a good headspace in this book.
Right. So, do you have plans for more of his story, or at least to continue the overarching plot of what's going on globally?
Yeah, I am working on 2 current projects. One of them is the next book in this little thing. It's called Wonderland, which brings together characters from Silver Bullets, my weird Western. Tom is a character in that as well, actually. And also the characters from Peter Pan are in that one. There's Wendy Darling and Pan are in that book, as well as some hints to Oz and various other hidden portal fantasy type books. And that one, I think I should be finished before the end of the year. The other project that I'm working on is completely unrelated to this, and it's about 400,000 words already. God help me. It's a book about pro wrestlers after the apocalypse. So if anybody had told me I'd be writing that book and that it would already be as long as it is, I would have thought they were crazy, but sometimes life takes us in weird ways.
It really does.
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, Tom is a character in Wonderland. He is not the narrator. Wonderland is one of the first books I've ever written that's entirely in the omniscient third person because it jumps around a lot from perspective to perspective.
All right. Anything else about someone else's story you want to share with folks that I didn't think to ask?
One of the things about it is that it is, I think, kind of funny, and that is not a thing that I expect. Most of my books are not particularly funny, but funny in a really dark way. But I think there's some real emotional payoffs, especially for those of us who are older and queer and dealing with that whole family issue. But I guess I would say about someone else's story that I'm often my own worst critic. And of the books that I've written, it's the one that I kind of enjoy the most. I think it's a fun trip. There's serious stuff in it, but as long as you have a strong stomach and don't mind a little body horror, you'll probably laugh.
Nice. Bez, did you have questions?
No, I'm just fascinated by the whole concept, and it's just like taking our queer literary history and playing with those colors in a different way. And I kind of like where that's going with it. So kudos to you for deciding to play in that playland, so to speak.
Well, thanks. I really love William Burroughs, and this book is kind of my love letter to both William Burroughs and Mary Shelley in the same book, which is a pretty strange combo. But yeah,
she was around Lord Byron, so I don't think that's up.
Yeah, well,
she would be right there with it. She'd be cool with it.
Yeah, there's a chapter in my book called "A Letter from the Western Lands," which is William S. Burroughs' last letter to the Frankenstein monster before he dies, and I'm particularly pleased with because I think I really captured something about his voice and his way of speaking, and he's one of those authors that I deeply regret not having had a chance to meet, although he was, by all accounts, a disagreeable person. So I don't know.
Yeah, meeting the heroes, it's a reason.
That's a whole thing.
Yeah, it's a whole thing, and it's real.
Mm-hmm. All right. Are you ready for our get to know you questions?
As ready as I'm going to be.
Take it away, Bass.
I'll be gentle.
All right.
Okay. So, in this year of WoW, what one word describes your favorite food?
Savory.
Okay. Your favorite entertainment genre?
Film.
Okay. Where are you on the spectrum of mundane versus magical?
Witchy.
Okay. Your preferred level of PDA?
None.
You're the environment where you relax the most?
Home.
Okay. Your preferred beverage?
Soda.
Where do you fall on the scale of youthful naivete versus the wisdom of experience?
Fool.
Nice.
Oh, that's the beginning of wisdom, as they say. Your favorite fictional character?
That one's tough.
Yep, you got to choose amongst your children.
Drunk.
Okay. your favorite mode of travel?
Feet.
Okay, excellent.
Nice.
Well done. See, wasn't so painful.
One word is hard.
It is. We would have allowed hyphenation.
Yes, exactly.
I want all the words.
I can't say anything in less than 120,000 words.
Right.
So I know you've teased us with your upcoming projects. Do you have anything else you want people to know about?
Just at this particular point, anyone who wants to buy someone else's story, I would be extremely grateful if you did.
Why don't you show them the book?
I will show you the book. It looks like this.
Yeah,
It comes out from the Seventh Terrace. The beetles on the cover are a reference to the island of Souria, not just crawling over this torn flesh. It is available, through all your usual venues, but as is the case with small presses, you're probably, unfortunately, best to go on an online bookstore if you really want to get it. But yeah, we have had some challenges this year in terms of being able to do promotion. We're still dealing with some of the post-lockdown nonsense, but we're hoping that this summer we're going to be able to go to some of the various conventions and really flog it. And I'll try and do some readings, be on some committees, that kind of thing. I've had some interesting luck. I released Sleeping Underwater immediately before the lockdown and had to cancel all the press tours.
Oh
It's
no.
a pain in the butt. But
Oh.
yeah, I'm just working on those books, and I'm also working on a one-man stage show, which of course is the lamest thing in the world. But it's about a history of the island of Souria as though it were a real place, which to me it very much is. I'm hoping to do a slideshow and talk about its effect on pop culture. And I'm also, God help me, because I don't even sing or play an instrument, writing a musical right now called Scream of the Deathbringer, which is metal, but yeah, I like to keep my fingers in a bunch of different projects. Keeps me from getting bored, and also
and getting into trouble in other ways.
yeah, and also from finishing things. You don't want that.
Yeah, right, exactly.
I'm about the exact opposite of Gayleen, by the way. If anybody who's listened to the show remembers Gayleen, Gayleen is a very A to B outline, write the book, very well controlled and organized, whereas I am a fool. I'm kind of chaotic and just do what I do.
Love it. Love it.
Yep.
Speaking of that, I'm about to ask where the best place is for people to contact you, but I think we need to tell the story behind your URL because I read it in your longer bio and it cracked me up because I wanted to do the same thing. You landowner, you.
Yeah, I right under the name Laird Ryan States. Nobody in the world uses my quote unquote title. But I realized when I was trying to promote stuff ages ago that if you Google my name, you just get a simple declarative statement, Paul Ryan states this, right? So I went and I found a decent charity and bought myself that 1 square foot of Scottish forest to help preserve, so that I could use the title Laird Ryan States. And now you can find me. So my URL is lairdryanstates.com. I just got my website back, so I'm finally getting to update it. There's some technical stuff going on there. You can also find me as Ryan States on Facebook, and you can send me an email if you wish at ryanstates@gmail.com. I'm an extremely easy writer to get a hold of, and I love hearing from people. If you've read my book, please review it. I'm sure you have people tell you that all the time, but also, writers really do like to hear from readers. It's a lonely job. I spend about 4 hours a day every day sitting at this desk, just trying to hammer stuff out, and you can forget sometimes while you do it, folks. So if you love your writers, give them the ego boo. They need it.
Yeah. And one of your fellow Canadian writers actually taught me the easiest way to write a review. Nathan Burgoyne used to work at a bookstore. Said, write 3 sentences. What the book's about in 1 sentence, who it would be good for, and what it meant to you. Best reviews ever. Super simple.
Excellent advice from Nathan Burgoyne.
Especially for those who don't know what to write.
Yeah, that's
well, and that's the thing. Like,
and you don't want them to do a book report of and then and then and then and then. You don't want them to reveal the whole story. So that's a great target. You have 3 sentences to write. You have 3 questions to answer, and it gives people what they need to know about the work.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to start sharing that. That's an excellent thing, because I think that's exactly what keeps most people from doing it. Stage fright.
Yeah, they just don't want to make a misstep, kind of thing.
Yep. All right. Any final words of wisdom?
No, I don't think so. I think people who've listened to this podcast long enough have already heard most of the big ones. But
well, give us something foolish then.
Well, I would say the best advice that I have for you as a writer is that if you can't write something good on any particular given day, write something incredibly silly. Because sometimes that's where the gold is found. Like sometimes I will just put something on the page that is utterly out of left field. Will it make it into the final product? No, not necessarily, but it's often what helps me find what I'm looking for. So just feel free to have fun with the process. I think
Right.
it's easy to give up on that, you know.
And I think it's also good, you know, another one that I'll throw at you and our listeners and viewers out there: practice writing opening sentences to a story, because often most people struggle with how to crack the story and how to grip people from the first sentence. Just write something that you may not ever write the story that goes after it, but honing that craft of a good opening line is always a good thing.
Oh, you know what? I do have one more tip.
Oh, okay.
There's a writer from the 20s and 30s named Lester Dent. He wrote all the Doc Savage pulp novels with a few exceptions, but he was routinely writing like 200,000 words a month for like 8 years. He had a tip to avoid forgetting where you were going, which is if you need to get up from the typewriter for whatever reason, leave in the middle of a sentence. Don't finish the sentence before you go, because if you leave in the middle of a sentence, you'll remember exactly where you were when you were writing. And I'll be darned if that isn't an amazing tip. I started using it and it absolutely works.
Nice. Love it, love it, love it. All right, folks, we'd like to extend a huge thank you to Laird Ryan States for joining us today. Ryan, thank you so much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to be here.
It was our pleasure, too. All right, we at Written on the Edge are proud to introduce you to new media by queer content creators. So if you enjoy learning about new artists or hearing our thoughts on entertainment media, like, subscribe, do all the bells and whistles. Show is produced by Rogue Ravens Media. You've heard me say it before. It's the end of the year. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. www.rotepodcast.com. Tune in next week for your queer media fix.
Bye.
Oh, what's that? Closing time. The bums rush in melody, dear.